he could often be spotted walking about with his poodle under his arm, and a bit odd, a little bit odd, I think you would agree. And get rid of cash is another reminder to mortgage some of the estates. And this is an example of how he just had no sense of worth or value. Along the woodland paths at Plasnewydd, he liked to walk in the evenings, and certainly it could get quite chilly in the winter particularly, and he would have braziers burning along the way to try and keep him warm as he walked around. On one occasion he was wearing a fur coat with jewels tacked all over it, and he got too warm, so he just threw it on the fire. Just because he was too warm. He loved to have historical balls and firework displays. At 28, he had a number of fireworks, quite exotic. And again, all very, very costly. His private apartments are fitted out with mauve velvet, with filigree gold ornaments, and he loved dogs. He's got loads of dogs. All sorts of dogs. Terriers, pugs, Pomeranians. Which more might go back to a dog sale and dog show, but just so many dogs. So just having one of anything just wouldn't do. He had to have a lot. And he just kept spending. And he built up huge debts. Now, I'll just interject one of these questions at this point. If someone in a family starts to spend a lot of money that they haven't got, other members of the family might just say, "Are you sure about this?" They might just keep an eye on them. And if it's a big, well-established traditional family, you would think there would be managers and agents who'd help them manage their estates and manage their affairs. But that doesn't seem to have quite happened. He just seems to have carried on spending without anybody keeping an eye on him or advising him or stopping him. And I puzzle a little bit about that. That for me is one of the unanswered questions. And by 1904, he was actually bankrupt. He'd spent it all. He'd got to the point where his outgoings had just taken it all up. And along the list of creditors, the jewellers, of course, were queuing up to be paid. As a result, a whole lot of things were sold. They had the Anglesey sales. And the sales lasted for 40 days. 17,000 lots from those pedigreed dogs to motor cars. The jewellery doesn't seem to have raised a great deal. Some of it was actually found to be glass, not actual gems. And there's a question in my mind again, whether or not he was ripped off by the jewellers, or he'd started to sell the jewels back and get copies to keep funding his lifestyle. I don't know quite how that could be, but you would think the jewellery would have raised more than that, I think. So I think that poses another little question.
So that is today's money, that 32,000?
No, that would be in those days. So
That would be a million.
yes, I mean it'd be 2 million, but even so. I mean, this was a description from a local paper, I think. Boots are laid out like a complete collection of everything that could be strapped, buckled, or laced upon the foot of man. Here's the finest silk pyjamas. 100 dressing gowns, that I believe. 160k with gloves, 100 overcoats. I mean, it's just obviously been bought and then just not, there's no sense of going to the wardrobe, just buy another. So, of course, the papers had a field day reporting all of this. The revelation of this mad aristocratic excess. The Flash Newark itself was left empty, just a few old servants. And their future was obviously at risk because if Flash Newark got sold, where would they go? But the Marquis was still, by our standards, he was still relatively wealthy. He managed to come to an arrangement with his creditors, which gave him 6 shillings in the pound, and he still had 3,000 a year in those days, 150,000 a year today to live on, which isn't bad. And he moved to France. He left the country and he stayed there for the rest of his life. Daily Mail at the time found him in the Grand Hotel in Dinan, that splendid pauper. And he still seems to have liked his perfumes, his hair tonics, his cheap jewellery. That may be referring back to the glass again. Again, we know that the press had misunderstood him and hoped that his eclipse was only going to be temporary. And he reckoned that in 2 or 3 years' time, he'd get his theatre back and get back on track. But in fact, his health caught him out. One of his colds got onto his chest, and complications, and it's thought he actually contracted pneumonia, and he died in Monte Carlo. And in a strange twist, his ex-wife and Madame Potvin, probably his aunt, were there by his side. But again, was he a victim or was he a villain? I think it's very foolish, but I don't know whether he was actually a villain. And he was certainly a sad and lonely person, apparently without anybody to regulate that behaviour. His former wife married a banker, had 3 children. Apparently she was a bit of a girl as well. After their marriage broke down, she was reported on getting around quite a bit in Paris and London. But eventually she settled down anyway and had 3 children with this banker. And another member of the family, Paget's, took the title and became the 6th Marquis. And one of the first things he did was to destroy most of the papers of the 5th Marquis and convert the Gaiety Theatre back into a chapel. The family are clearly not comfortable, if you like, with this episode in their history, and they were very happy to sort of try and bury it. And if you think about it, the disasters that befell Beaudesert itself, which is why it got mostly demolished, was because the family had lost its fortune through the 5th Marquis. And it's taken a lot to kind of regain stability. What with death duties and taxes and the debts that he left, Beaudesert became a casualty. I suppose if you're the Marquis of Anglesey and you're faced with a challenge to get rid of one of your properties, nobody gets rid of the London house. And so you've got Beaudesert and Flash Newark. Well, if you're the Marquis of Anglesey, you're presumably going to keep Anglesey. And that's why Beaudesert became the casualty. Of course, the servants and tenants and so on all became swept up in the sort of disaster of the sale the loss of their jobs, the loss of the estate and all that that meant to the locality. He had been very generous, and in many people, some of his tenants and servants particularly, he was genuinely seen with affection. But he certainly transgressed the norms of the aristocratic and most other worlds. He was quite exceptional in that respect. But who was looking after him? Who just let him throw it all away? Because he doesn't sound like a strong character who could have, he wasn't a strong manager of the estate. So how did it all come to this, I wonder? I think there's still a lot of questions which we don't know the answers to. But one way or another, we spent the money. Again, probably an affection. Material assets, but not anything emotional. Very sad. There you go again. Sam Burns will waste his life. Well, I think that probably is fairly true. Here we are. We can try and take any questions. But,
Questions, I'm sure.
Well, what is I presume he never got remarried or had any kids, and another family member took over.
that's why the cousin took over, I think.
Yeah.
Didn't he have any brothers or sisters or?
No, it's only child.
Are you quite sure that there was nobody in the background trying to stop him?
I'm not sure, but there's no evidence of it.
No. Well, I mean, they don't say,
Well, that of course is another thing.
yeah.
And maybe the family were ashamed, and maybe that's why they burned the papers.
What happened to the mine?
Well, the mines were sold. Eventually they were nationalised.
Well, the mine, all they took, the Marquis and the family took, rights from the mine. They didn't own the mines.
Oh,
They-
they just invested in it.
They just took lease money from the mines. So the mines belonged to the Cannican Roosby Colliery Company and the Burntwood Colliery Company and other colliery companies. So they paid rent to the Marquis. So they continued to pay that until the mines got nationalised in 47.
Yeah, but the mineral rights were
The mineral rights,
Yeah.
they would have paid mineral rights. They didn't actually own the mines.
So the family was left with a Sergeant Linton after he had died.
After
The
Okay.
there were still assets.
oh yeah,
we were still
Yeah.
quite a large income, I should imagine.
they still own an enormous income. Yes, but when he died, he died owing about £40 million, and £40 million in 1905. You know, that's how much he owed in 1905. So, and then after the end of the First World War, the government imposed huge death duties on all the great families, and that's what led to the demise of Beaudesert. The amount of tax they owed and the amount of money that they still owed saw the end of Beaudesert. And they couldn't give the house away. They tried to give the house away, and nobody would have it because there's no money to go with it. So they actually sold the house for building rubble. Bridge House in London is a bank. It's now a bank, and Plasnoid now belongs to Cadwr, the National Trust for Wales.
They have a Grace and Favour.
They have a Grace and Favour apartment that a cousin of one of the Pagets lives in, like the old Lord Lichfield used to have a Grace and Favour house at Shugbury. He no longer does, but they still do it last night.
Of the three houses, so Beaudesert went because the estates were sold off, and the sixth Marquis bought back 123 acres and set up a trust with the Lord Lieutenant, Lord Harrowby at that time, the Chairman of the County Council, the Chairman of the Campaign for the Protection of Rural England, and the Scout and Guide Commissioners for Staffordshire. That's old Staffordshire, so it included the Black Country and so on. And they set up a trust to make the estate available for the benefit of young people.
Brothers are scattered.
Yeah, well, I knew that.
And then Plasnewydd, as John said, is they gave that to the National Trust, and the Uxbridge House has become a bank. But the present Marquis, who visited us about 12, 13 years ago now, he lives in Oxfordshire. So they've obviously moved. There's obviously still some wealth there, but they've moved it around a bit, and it's not bound up in those three properties.
Anybody would like the picture of the house there? I've got a print of it here. That's how the house looked in 1824.
It is a beautiful place.
And that's what is left now. If you can see here, there's a chimney. Well, the fireplace to that chimney and a little bit of that wall and a couple of those windows is left. And there's a little behind this front, there's a part of the rear part of the house that's standing, but all this east front, this is the east front of the house. All this east front, which was built in about 1570 by the second Baron Paget, that's all gone. That was a great brick front. That was the first part that was knocked down. And this is the walkway that was built for them for the first Marquis. And that there is Lady Paget's sitting room. And from there were doorways. There was a doorway that the Marquis could come out and walk along this terrace and could survey all his land out over South Staffordshire. And the house was built on the end of a when the house was built an ecclesiastical hunting lodge. It was built right where it is on the end of a ridge by Bishop Walter Langton, because on the end of that ridge you can actually see Lichfield Cathedral. Yeah.
That's what's left.
Yeah.
But that's the drainage front that was built onto.
Yeah. That's around the side.
Yeah, well, I don't know.
This is to the south side.
Yeah. You're looking round that side.
So if you come up from the A51 and in front of you, you've got that glass. Is that the gatehouse?
Oh,
Grand Lodge.
that's Grand Lodge.
Lodge.
That is right down. That's right down. That's right. You see this road here? That's the end. That's right down the end of that road. Yeah. That's Grand Lodge. That was built in 1814.